Sarah Rae, welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are doing well. Today is another episode of Crime Time and Tea. Yes, it is in a Merry Everything cup. You do not judge me. Today we are talking about the case that helped create 911, an easier way to get help faster, but we're also discussing what really happened in the unjust murder of Kitty Genovese that night. Did 38 witnesses really just ignore her while she died? That will be answered right here, right now. But first, you know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications of when I upload, and let's get discussing what happened to Kitty Genovese. Alright, you guys, you know, gotta have that tea. What are you guys drinking? If you guys aren't drinking tea, are you guys having coffee? Soda? What are you guys drinking? Let me know in the comment section down below. I am drinking a cinnamon apple spice tea, and it is amazing. But it's super hot right now, but that makes it all the better. Let's jump into this topic. First, who is Kitty Genovese? Kitty was born Catherine Susan Genovese on July 7, 1935 in Brooklyn, New York, to an Italian-American parents named Rachel and Vincent Genovese. She's the oldest of all her siblings. She has 4 younger siblings. I know 3 of their names. There is Vincent, who is the oldest brother. There is Frank, who is the youngest brother, and then there's William, who is named Bill, and he's kind of important, I think, to this case because he was really close to Kitty, and he also made a very important documentary for Kitty called The Witness, and it is not only for him to figure out what happened that night exactly, but also what did the witnesses know? Was there 38? What happened? So, I mean, it goes into detail. He even has an actress reenact the scene that happened that night at the exact time, just to see how many people would have heard. And, I mean, it is incredible. It'll send chills down your spine, that scene. I tried to get a video so I could show you that clip, but there's none on YouTube, none that I could show you. But if you're interested in Kitty, interested in seeing that documentary, it is on Amazon Prime if you are a Prime member. Not sponsored, but that is where I watched it, and trust me, it is worth it. Anyways, Bill said no one understood him quite like Kitty, and I believe this really shows her character and the type of person she was. Very caring, and he said that she always made time for him, always made time to answer his questions. And he was only 16 when she died. I mean, imagine how hard that must have been. He, in the documentary, told his son that imagine losing both his mom and his dad. That's what it was like for Bill losing Kitty. That broke my heart to imagine that for him. As most Italians are, the Genoveses were raised Catholic. I can speak for that because I am Italian American. I was raised Catholic. Kitty went to an all-girls school called Prospect Heights High School. She graduated in 1953 in a class of 712 of her peers. Her favorite classes were English and music class. And she was described as funny and witty. She loved to play hooky. She was popular. Everybody wanted to be in her group. She was that girl. She was a talkative person, which is a typical Italian, really, because she was charming and attractive. She was smart, wise, and bright, and a very good student. During Kitty's senior year, she was elected as class cut-up, which I do believe is kind of like class clown. She just had this infectious, bright energy about her and a zest for life. Not long after she graduated, her mom felt the city was too dangerous to live in. Some reports say her mom witnessed a murder, and that's what led to them moving. But either way, they moved to New Canaan, Connecticut. But Kitty decided she didn't want to move. The city was where she wanted to be. And so she stayed in New York City. She did get married, except it was quickly annulled. And all this actually happened in a year, 1 year, by the end of 1954. Okay. So Kitty jumped around from different jobs. At first she was a secretary, she was a waitress at one point, and a barmaid. In August of 1961, Kitty was actually arrested for taking bets for horses from her bar patrons. She was fined $50 and she did lose her job. But that was okay because she found herself another job bartending and then managing at a bar she absolutely loved called Eve's 11th Hour Bar. And she was said to be very reliable and hardworking. One of the boys, they said she was the queen of the bar, and they knew something that her family didn't know until later. And that something was that she was a gay woman. And with that, in March of 1963, Kitty would be at a bar and saw a woman who was sitting having a beer at the counter. She'd walk up to her and say, "Do I know you from somewhere?" And this woman named Marianne would say, "Well, no." Eventually this woman would tell her that she lived at 74th and Broadway across from a payphone. And Kitty found this place and left Marianne a note at the door saying that she was going to call her at that payphone at 7. And she did. The call came and they talked. Marianne said that she fell in love. In the documentary, Bill asked, did Kitty love her back? And Marianne said she didn't know because Kitty was conflicted about being gay. And she knew this because they had arguments about that. And Marianne believed that Kitty would have came to terms with it if she would have had the time and that things would have gotten better. But unfortunately, she never got that chance. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the night Kitty was just ruthlessly taken from the world. It was March 13th, 1964, and Kitty had just left work at Eve's 11th Hour Bar. It was around 2:30 a.m. and she drove home in her little red Fiat. Iconic, really. She was 28 at the time, and some say she was trying to get home because it was her 1-year anniversary with Marianne. She got to the parking lot at 3:15, where she parked her car in the same place for over a year, in the Kew Gardens, Long Island Railroad Station parking lot, which was 100 feet from her apartment door. Now, some reports say while she was walking, she happened to see her attacker, and as she passed by him, that's when he started coming up behind her. She ran, and that's when the attack happened. And other reports say that as she was walking, she heard footsteps, she glanced behind her, and then ran. Either way, the reports have in common, the man came up behind her, and Kitty ran. She goes towards the front entrance of the apartment building, which she usually goes to the back, but he caught up to her and started stabbing her from behind. During this attack, disclaimer, this might be hard to hear, so if you don't want to hear a small bit of detail, you can fast forward 5 seconds, 10 seconds. In this attack, it did pierce her lungs, and this is what would be later her cause of death. Asphyxiation. An elevator operator in the apartment buildings across the street did see this attack happen. And instead of calling the police, he just went to his apartment and went to sleep. During this time, I want to make it known that 911 wasn't a thing. You had to call your local precinct and report a crime. And Bill Clinton, after this attack happened, went on to talk about it, make a special statement, and he said the average response time was 2 minutes. And I'm not sure I fully believe that. I kind of wonder if because 60s, some police stations were corrupt. That's a known thing. So average time being 2 minutes, I do believe crimes were pick and choose. Not all crimes were looked at as equal, and I think they just overlooked and was just like, okay, well, it's not a big deal. We'll get to it when we want, And I kind of wonder if a call came in about this, would they have responded? Let's think about that as I have some tea. To add to that, she is gay. This is during a time where gay people weren't acceptable in the public eye. They were treated differently, which is not okay. But that was the times. Police very much harassed gay people. I don't know, I highly doubt they knew Kitty was gay, but you gotta think of all possibilities, right? So let's jump forward to the big headline that's associated with this case, and that is that 38 witnesses watched Kitty be attacked and did nothing. And we'll get more in depth with this statement a little bit later when we finish talking about the attack and everything. But I cannot question this and talk a little bit about it as we go on and talk about the attack, okay? Now, remember, this is at 3 a.m. People are sleeping. Kitty is screaming as she is being attacked. 38, we can't be sure of the number, period. Also, it isn't like when they are awakened by screams, they are sitting there watching the whole attack go down. In fact, there is maybe a handful of people top that physically see the attack go down. The rest of them are ear witnesses. They state that they heard screams but saw nothing. There are also 2 attacks. The first one in front of the building, the second one behind the building inside another building. So what? Are these like 38 people Superman where they can see through buildings too? It makes no sense. Back to the attack. I'm also going to reference 4 people's statements of that night, which you can get from police transcripts and the witness documentary. While Kitty was being attacked, a woman named Irene, who lived in the apartment buildings across the street from where the first attack happened. She was in apartment 204. She heard screams. She got out of bed and saw both of them. She saw Kitty and the man, but nothing was happening, so she went back to bed. Short time later, she heard another yell. She heard, "Please help me, God, help me, I've been stabbed." Irene went to the window and saw a man over Kitty, and then he ran away. The reason he ran away is because of a man named Robert. Now, Robert lived in apartment 715, and he saw Kitty and the man over top of her, and so he yelled, "Hey, get out of there." And so I stated the man ran away, which is followed up by another woman named Andre, I think is how you pronounce her name, in apartment 403, which she heard screamings, and then she said she actually heard a neighbor yell and then saw the man run away. Now this part is important because she said she saw Kitty get up and yell for help, and then she saw her walk to the back of the building, out of sight. Not much later, she saw the same man come and walk to the back of the building where she heard 2 more screams. So then that second attack. So Kitty crawled to the back of the apartment building in the hallway, where the same man returned and started again stabbing her. But this time he assaulted her and then stole money from her and left. During this time, a man did witness this attack, and his name is Carl, who was a friend of Kitty's. But instead of doing anything, he just closed the door. Some reports say he called a friend, others say he called his girlfriend. Either way, he called somebody, to which this person told him to not get involved. 10 minutes after the attack, he did call the police, which this is the only recorded call that the police got, that the police put in records regarding this attack. The infamous New York Times, who posted the 38 witnesses, never mentioned that Kitty wasn't alone when she died. Sophie, who lived at 8270 Austin Street, was a great friend of Kitty's. Someone who Kitty would go to and confide in all the time. She was almost at Sophie's house every morning having breakfast. Sophie lived next door to Kitty and Marianne. That night they heard a blood-curdling scream, and Sophie's husband looked out the window and saw nothing. So they too went back to bed. 20 minutes or so later, someone called Sophie and told her Kitty's in the hall bleeding. And people believe this someone was Carl. Sophie didn't hesitate to throw on her jacket and run straight down to Kitty, who was laying with her head towards the door and her feet towards the stairs. But Kitty was still alive when Sophie got there. She had to push the door as hard as she could to get in. And while she was there trying to calm Kitty down, Kitty was just still fighting. But after a while, she managed to calm her down. Sophie said she could just feel Kitty's wounds. Michael, Sophie's son, said he looked down and all he could see was blood covering the entire floor. And the smell, he said, something he could never forget. Reports say Kitty died on the way to the hospital, but Sophie said she died in her arms. There were handprints on the wall that were marked, thinking that they were Kitty's, but they were actually Sophie's, trying to get up. It's just sad that the New York Times were quick to show that, oh, nobody reacted. The bystander effect, where people are less likely to react if they're not alone, if they're in a group of people, because of that fact. But people did react, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit, but Sophie did go and do something, and somebody did yell out, and Carl did end up calling the police. And you'll find out more here in a little bit. Tea, we need a tea break because that is intense. Five days later, the police found the man who did this attack. His name is Winston Mosley, and he was caught stealing a TV from a person's house, and a neighbor saw and intervened, which so great that that man did that. The police thought that Winston looked and resembled the man that they had reports of that attacked Kitty. And when they questioned Winston, Winston just outright was like, yeah, I did it, gave details, and admitted to other crimes and even admitted to 2 other murders. This man's insane. But we're also talking about a man who has an IQ of 135. You know, there's that fine line between genius and insanity, so which one are you? So he explained what happened in between the attacks that night. That he heard Robert yell out, and so he ran to his car and waited. Figured nobody was going to intervene, so he changed hats and found Kitty again. When he saw Carl, he knew he wasn't going to do anything, so he just continued his attack. In June of 1964, Winston was found guilty and sentenced to death. However, he appealed in 1995 and got a life sentence instead with the possibility of parole. The annoying thing is that in 1968, he escaped for 4 days in Buffalo. He broke into homes and held hostages and assaulted people, but thank God nobody was killed. This just shouldn't have happened, but he got additional time on his sentence. He claims to not remember the details of the attack itself, but remembers the motions. He was denied parole 18 times, and on March 28th, 2016, Winston died at the age of 81. And he is known as New York's longest serving... No, you ain't getting a title in this video at all. You murdered somebody, not sorry. Now, when it comes to the family, her brother Frank couldn't even go to her funeral, and the family almost erased her from their lives. I mean, her death overshadowed her life, and that's explainable. I mean, when somebody's murdered in such a brutal way, and then the media circus that came with it, I mean, they believed what was reported, that 38 people did nothing. A year after her death, her mother had a stroke, and her dad, not long after that, died at the age of 59 from the same, a stroke. They did say Rachel, Kitty's mother, forgave Winston in her heart, which that woman is a saint, because I don't think I could ever forgive somebody for murdering my child in cold blood. But that is my opinion. I'd like you guys to gain your own. Now let's talk about the story, the 38 witness story, and the actual truth about it. First, like I said, we don't know if 38 people actually heard or saw or anything. It could be more, it could be less. And where did 38 even come from? Most, again, were ear witnesses. What we know from the first attack was happening, it was on Austin Street, and most people actually thought that it was a drunken fight or a couple dispute. No one actually thought a murder was taking place. After Winston ran off and Kitty went to the back of the building, those who were actually watching it thought Kitty was gone and safe. So when Winston came back, they just assumed that Kitty was okay. Also, they claimed no one called the police, but people claimed they did, and that they got told that the police, they already had gotten the call and then hung up on. Hold on, Harley Bug. Also, Michael, Sophie's son, remembers that a lot of the people around that area had numbers on their arm. And if you know anything about history, you know that that means they were people from concentration camps. And that might explain why some of them didn't do anything, because of authority figures. They just don't want to get involved because of what happened with the Nazis in concentration camps. Now, if this is true, we don't know 100% for the fact because we weren't there, and that is coming from somebody who was. So I thought I would add that. But if so much of this story is wrong, why didn't anyone put out the right story? Well, the fact is that New York Times is who broke this story. Let me let this cat out. Okay, where was I? Right. New York Times broke this story. And back then, New York Times ran everything. Nobody would want to challenge them because they looked at them as trustworthy journalists, and they looked up to them, and even though some of it they thought was a little weird, they weren't going to do anything about it because it's the New York Times. That was the way it was back then, and it still kind of is now. In a way, New York Times is still that big publication. So in 1968, 911 was created, and it was due to the fact that calling the station was shown to be very time-consuming and severely delaying to getting help. Bill Clinton. Average 2-minute response time? Sure. Anyway, I think the big thing is at the end of the day, someone died. And could her life have been saved? Maybe. It just all truly depends on what could have been. Did people really call the police? Well, their police records show that only one person called. Could the police have just not recorded it? That very much could be the case. Could somebody have went down and brought her in? That very much could have happened. Someone could have brought her in and called the cops and really pushed it. If a punctured lung, if it was only one, is treated quickly, her life could have been saved. Kitty's life could have been saved. If it's both, I'm not sure. I don't think her life could have been saved in that instance. Maybe, but the longer they waited, the worse it got. I'm just glad Kitty was with her friend when she died. And it's heartbreaking because I think she would have had an incredible life, because the way people describe her, she just sounds so beautiful. She had a beautiful soul, and that was what was lost that night. But thankfully, her death wasn't in vain, because it came with the creation of 911. And I feel like that is her soul coming out of through it, because that to me was the type of person she was. Very caring and taking the time to help people and being reliable and hardworking. And I feel like that's Kitty. So that's the case of Kitty Genovese and what truly happened that night. How 38 witnesses didn't physically watch her be attacked and did nothing, and what came out of it. It's heartbreaking, but it's heartbreaking. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your guys' opinions and thoughts on this case. I would love to hear it. Let me know if there's any cases you guys want me to cover. And yeah, thank you guys. Stay safe and well, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.